Hello, in my previous video I explained how to write a program that has two balls, making them bounce around the screen, and how to have them collide. In this video I'm going to explain how to have more than two balls and to use an array for a whole lot of balls. If we have a ball object here, we create one ball object and we call it B1, another one is B2. Each ball object has all of these variables. And each ball object also has a bunch of other variables. So I've typed that in here. Each ball has all the properties of its parent rectangle class. In particular, it has its own x, y, width, and height, because that is what the rectangle has. So that's why we can use x, y, width, and height here without having to declare them up here. So the Vx and Vy are the speeds of the ball, and that's the color of the ball. Okay, so where were we? If we want 500 balls, we are going to have 500 variables here, copy this line 500 times, and we'll have to copy these two lines 500 times. Anytime you're copying the same thing over and over again with just a slight modification, you know that you're doing something wrong when you're programming. So, what we're going to do is make an array. An array is basically a series of boxes in which you can store stuff. So, when you make an array, you have to do three things. You have to say how big it is. So, for example, a size of 9 is one example. And then you have to name your array. What is the variable name that you're going to use? Finally, you have to say what goes inside your array. So this will be an array of ball objects. Often we have an array of integers. The arrays always start at number 0, and then they go up to number 8 in this particular case, which is 1 less than 9. So just to show you how this works, I'll make an array here. So I have an array called numbers with 9 integers in it. If I print out the content of numbers 3, it prints out a 0 down here. Okay? And if I add 1, it prints out a 1. If I try and access element number 9, I get an error because element number 9 does not exist. It gives me an array index out of bounds error. Anyway, that is an array of integers, which we don't really care about. Let's make an array of balls. Again, we use the square brackets to say that what we're making is an array of balls. And maybe I'll call it balls. Now I have to say how big my array is going to be. Instead of putting a number in here, I'm going to make a constant. So I can use this constant throughout my program, and I just change the number here if I want more balls. This is going to go away. Oops. What is going on here? Delete those. Let's get rid of this. And down here, we have to fix this up a little bit. Move ball is still working, and then we have to fix this stuff up here. Okay, so we have an array of 9 balls. However, if we try and color one of the balls yellow, we get an error message and nothing works. So here I'm saying take the ball in box number 2 and set the color to yellow. So box number 2 is over here. It should set it to yellow. The problem is when you make an array of objects, they're all set to be null. So there's actually nothing in the box. It's just null. You actually have to create the ball and stick it into the box for there to be anything in your array. This is different from integers. So we actually have to make a ball I'm assigning it to a variable called b, and I'll say balls square bracket I is equal to b. So then I copy the ball into my array in the location I, which is handled by my for loop. There's a small error here, and that's because of balls. The ball class wants the screen width. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to copy the screen width I'm just going to copy the screen width like this from the other class. So it's over here, and the screen width is up there. Okay, so I can run this, I can make my balls, and ball 2 will be colored yellow. These lines can actually be combined because I'm not using the B for anything else. There we go. In my main loop. Okay, let's try and draw the balls. I could use the same sort of for loop here to go through all of my balls. And by the way, instead of the length of my balls array, I could put num_b, which is the number of balls, and it would be exactly the same. There's another type of for loop called a for each loop. And what this for each loop says is it says, take every ball in my list called balls and assign that ball, one after the other, to the variable b. And it doesn't have to be a b. It could be anything. It could be Nemo, or whatever you want to call it. Then we just have to copy these lines here. And I just have to change the B ones to be Nemo. And I'm going to do that using search and replace. Selected lines, replace all, and we're done. So we now have a bunch of balls. The first one is yellow, the rest are red. I'm going to color half of them cyan. Okay, so there should be half of them be cyan and one should be yellow. Okay, that's great. We can also change the size of the balls. So I can say ball 0 dot width. Whatever the width is, I'm going to add 10 to the width. Now this will end up looking like an oval, so I have to add 10 to the height as well. And there we are. There's the bigger ball right there. Okay, so things are going along really well. We just need to move the balls, and we can use the same sort of for each loop to move the balls here. Okay, so this should move all of the balls, and then we'll draw the graphics, and it will sleep, and I think that's it. The balls are moving, they're bouncing, everything is working just fine. So what we've done is we've made an array of balls, and you can change the colors of the balls, you can change the size of them, and you only have one variable that you have to use to access every single ball. Now, what do we do if we want to remove a ball from the array? Oh, by the way, when I put a variable b here, this is just a local variable that's created inside this for loop. It's sending the ball called b down here, which goes to move ball. This could be anything. I could call my ball squid, and it would still work, because here I call it squid, here I call it b. And here, all of my balls are called Nemo, one after the other. Here they're called squid, one after the other, and it still works. Okay? The variables that you cannot change are the ones up here, your global variables and your constants. Okay, so in order to delete something, for example, if you're playing a game and you want to shoot up some of the balls and make them disappear, we have a problem. When you delete something from an array, you still have an empty space, which is now filled with a null. The ball number 3 does not move over to ball number 2's spot. There's still a box here for number 2, box 2, and it is empty. There are two ways that we can fix this. So one way is to add another variable to say if our balls are visible or not, and another way is to move our balls off the top of the screen. I'm just going to start doing something here so I can click with the mouse. Let me enable my mouse clicking. This only works with HSA graphics. It does not work with swing graphics. The mouse clicking, everything else is pretty much universal. So if my mouse has been clicked, then I have to see if I've clicked on a ball. I'm going to make a point called P. And it's going to have the X and Y locations of my mouse. Now all I have to do is see is point P inside any of my balls. It's right there. Okay. So if ball B contains P, that means I've clicked on a ball. And if I've clicked on a ball, I can delete it. Instead of deleting it, first of all, what I'm going to do is move it off the top of the screen. So I'm going to say this ball is going to go off the top of the screen, and I'm also going to have to change the Y speed to make sure it doesn't come back on the screen. Now I'm going to have to make this go a whole lot slower so I have a chance to actually click on the balls and see if they disappear. That one disappeared. Yep, they're disappearing. To see if you've won the game, you can go down here and see if there are any balls still on the screen. So we'll do another for loop. Okay, so here I'm saying we think we've won the game. If there are any balls that are still on the screen, we have not won the game. And so if we have won the game, we can just quit the program. And it should say game over. So let's try this part. So the balls are going slowly. I'm clicking on them. And I'm really not good at doing this. And it says game over. This ball is still on the screen because it ended before we drew the graphics. So I have to move the draw graphics up here, and that will solve that problem. The other way of getting rid of the ball is to make a variable in here to say whether it's visible or not. So each ball has a variable to say if it's visible or not, and instead of moving off the screen, we just say we set it so it's not visible. Then what we do is we go down here and we say if B is visible, we have not yet won the game. The only thing we have to do now here is see if the ball is visible before we draw it. For some reason our ball is called Nemo, which is very sad. If it's not visible, then we're going to continue and go on to the next ball. Okay, good. They're still disappearing. So I'm using the is visible Boolean to get rid of the balls. Go. Die. And the game is over, and everything is working. That is the end of this short video. The next video I will make will be about how to do this using an array list instead of an array.